We've got the UMA hat back on because the Seattle Kraken indeed did empty the tank going into the Four Nations break. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Krakens, to the OGers, to the everydayers. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. And for those watching on YouTube, you can see not only do I have the hat, but, I brought Wait a minute. Here it is. Hold on. I brought some of the swag back as well with a little bling bling, the Pirates chain here, because we knew we needed this win. The Seattle Kraken went out and got it. Now, I still think there are things that they can do to command a game a little bit earlier, a little bit more definitively, but we need points. And we got two. We didn't keep the Calgary Flames from getting points, but we will take this. And an overtime winner for Matty Beniers. That's right, 2025, the year of Beniers. We will absolutely take this. We'll talk about it on today's episode, which is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first ever $5 bet wins. We'll talk about that coming up on today's show. But the year of Beniers, we've been talking about our exclusive interview with Jessica Campbell, which you can watch on our YouTube page. We spoke to Jessica Campbell. She relayed to us that she and Matty Beniers going into 2025, so in December, had a conversation that 2025 was going to be his year. And you know what? Matty Beniers gets it done for the Seattle Kraken in overtime. And this was not a bad start for the Seattle Kraken. It was kind of the middle frame that mucked things up. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to put up right now, natural stat trick. You know I like to do the game flow. We're going to actually toggle this to all. And you can see that in all situations, the Calgary Flames early on did get a beat on the Seattle Kraken, and then things definitely shifted in the second frame. We'll talk about that second period a little bit, but then boom, here come the Seattle Kraken getting the final 3 goals of the game to win this one in overtime. So again, still some things that this team needs to work on, but they needed this win. They got the win. They got contributions from guys that we need to see moving forward if the Seattle Kraken really do, in earnest, want to try and catch Calgary, but not just Calgary, a lot of other teams on the field. So nobody scored in the first frame. Shots on goal in the first period, 10-9 in favor of the Seattle Kraken. And then things took a real turn. 5 shots on goal for the Seattle Kraken in the second frame, or the second stanza, as I like to say. 13 shots on goal for the Calgary Flames. Now, that is not what we want to see. Such a lopsided score, because that's also how Morgan Frost got on the board, gets the goal early in that second period, and then Nazem Kadri gets on the board again for the Flames. The Seattle Kraken now down 2-0 with roughly 14 or so minutes to go in the game in regulation. And then that's when things started heating up. We get 3 unanswered goals, starting off with Shane Wright, then Andre Burakovsky, and actually Wright gets the assist on that goal, and Matty Beniers with a power play goal for the win. And I said this is the year of Beniers. We need to see more from Matty Beniers, and I think we're starting to see it. He's starting to feel it. Let's hear what Matty Beniers had to say after this win.
How important is a win like this? A little bit of a skid. You're facing a break now, and it's against a team that you're hoping to catch after this break as well. Huge game, divisional game. Like you said, hoping to catch these guys.
and going into a break with a little bit of momentum, a nice win. It's good for the morale, good for our team. Get a little reset, come back, and we know what we need to do, where we're at right now, and so that's a good win, and one step closer to getting back on track where we want to be.
Anything said in that second intermission to spur on the comeback?
Yeah, I mean, definitely some things. Joe did a great job in that second period. We definitely didn't have our best period, and it was just getting back to the first period, the way we played there, getting up, getting aggressive, getting on top of them, being physical. Like, I thought we had a good first period. We were putting pressure, getting chances, and the second we slipped and let them kind of take over. And third period we started to get back to it a little bit, started getting no zone time, grinding them down, getting them tired. So that's the way we got to play to win. And
all things considered, the things we've talked about, what's the mood like heading back into that locker room after a big overtime win?
Yeah, a lot of smiles, which is good. Happy, always happy after a win, any kind of win, especially one when you battle back and play in the third and are able to get it done in overtime. So it's a good, like I said, good morale boost, good win, and take the break, reset, and get back to work.
Matty, you guys go down 2-0. What was the feeling on the bench at that point?
I was just trying to stay up, trying to stay positive. Feel like they score 2 goals, and you can't dwell on it. You just got to get back to work and try to put it in. And Ryder's line did exactly that. I thought a couple lines were getting good on time, and those guys found a way to finish and get to the net, get to the inside, which we hadn't been doing a great job of that whole game. So Ryder does that great job getting the net and increasing turnover. Berkey puts one in, so it's good.
There's a lot that Matty said there, including that the Shane Wright line, once again, the best line, and this is not only by Matty's eye test, many people's eye test, but Allison Lucan coming with the data analytics. The strongest line for the Seattle Kraken in terms of tilting the ice was the combination of Shane Wright, Andre Burakovsky. That one was for you, Dan Bilesma. Burakovsky and Jared McCann. In 9-12 minutes of ice time, 5-on-5, they were +3 in shot attempts and created 68.7% of all shot quality. We also heard from Dan Bilesma that the goal that Shane Wright scored, he felt that it's an uncharacteristic goal for Shane, but it's exactly the type of goal that the Seattle Kraken needed. Also, we heard from Shane Wright, who, of course, is now on a line with Andre Burakovsky, that he felt it was great that Berkey was able to get a goal, felt that he's been doing the right things. He's been able to rack up assists. And I do think we've heard from Andre Burakovsky. I was in Carolina, actually, when I recorded that episode. That was a fun one to record. And I think the official launch of the bedazzlement, do we want to say? I mean, it's not really, but it's a little zhuzhed up. The little zhuzhed up of my UMA hat here came in North Carolina. I got this. I got some other things that we'll add if we can keep this win streak going. But I loved that Burakovsky, he was getting props from his teammates. You heard Matty B say, hey, that line was tilting the ice, as Allison wrote. And that was critically important because Brandon Montour left the game in the first period. That meant Vince Dunn had to play over 29 minutes in this game as the Seattle Kraken short a defenseman. And in the time with Adam Larson, Dunn and Larson created 60.5% of all shot quality, including 7 shots on target, while allowing only 3 against. Another great game for Joey Daccord. Was a quality start for both netminders, but of course, we're going to focus on Joey Daccord. 46 unblocked shots sent his way, stopped all but 2, earned his 23rd quality start of the season. Top players, according to Game Score, Larson led all players, Wright, Burakovsky, Dunn, and McCann. So this was not an easy win. It wasn't we started off really, kind of ramming our game down their throats kind of game. No, this was another grinded out game. In fact, the Kraken in the win over Calgary in overtime earned their 14th comeback win, 7th multi-goal comeback, and that is the most in the National Hockey League. Only Boston and Philly have more third period multi-goal comeback wins this season. So we'll take it. Of course, we'll take it. The guys are feeling good going into the break. We are going to see a little bit of Capo Caco. We hope we'll see a little bit of Capo Caco in the Four Nations face-off, which we'll talk about coming up. But this was critical. And we'll talk about why and where the Seattle Kraken exactly sit in the standings, what they have to get done next. And then, as I mentioned later, we'll talk a little bit about the Four Nations face-off, all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the WNBA, well, the WNBA also, but the MNBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. Hey, thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken, coming to you on a Monday after the Seattle Kraken get a much-needed win over the Calgary Flames. And we know that this team has very low odds, the Seattle Kraken, that is, of making the playoffs. Now, if this team is going to do it, I love that we do have some stats that are stacked in their favor. The comeback wins. If you're going to be a playoff team, if you're going to be a team that's got moxie, that's got some sandpaper, comebacks is a part of the game. I would also like to see a little more discipline, especially early in the game, but we'll start with this. We'll stick with the positives as we're wearing this UMA hat because the Seattle Kraken are back in the win column ahead of the Four Nations break. Now, that being said, we do know that there is a lot of work to do. This is by no means, and I do mean by no means, a guarantee. As a matter of fact, the Seattle Kraken in the Western Conference still remain behind the Anaheim Ducks at 54 points, the St. Louis Blues at 55 points, the Utah Hockey Club at 57 points, and the Calgary Flames at 60 points. In the lead for the wild card is the Colorado Avalanche. The Colorado Avalanche with 68 points, the Vancouver Canucks with 63 points. And the three teams kind of leading the pace for the Western Conference are the Edmonton Oilers, or in the Pacific Division as well, I should say, the Edmonton Oilers, the Vegas Golden Knights, and the LA Kings. Now, when we look at the odds for the Seattle Kraken to actually make the playoffs, this is per puck money. Not great odds. It's at a 0.8, so it's even less than we saw before. And, that's because of work that wasn't done earlier in the season. And the Seattle Kraken are going to have to figure out what's going to happen here. I continue to tell you, and I know a lot of people on our YouTube channel disagree with this. I get the temptation to say that this is a coaching issue. And as I've talked about on the episode, if you are everydayers, if you are OGers, if you're a part of our our subtext community and one of our Locked On Kraken insiders, then you know I don't like having to be critical of the coaching staff, but it's absolutely warranted. That being said, what I do not agree with is people overlooking some of the front office foibles that have gone on with this Seattle Kraken team, because we've already made a coaching change. Let's not forget we've already made a coaching change. And we heard from Ron Francis after some of those reports from 32 Thoughts that Ron Francis said Dan is his guy, that he believes in Dan, that he chose Dan as the general manager. But some of these contracts, some of the inability to make what seemingly the inability to make moves happen, it has us in a situation now where Philip Grubauer is in the AHL. I mean, there were some roster moves again, mostly for some guys who normally are playing in the AHL to continue to play in the AHL while the NHL is on a little bit of a break here. So we'll see what happens after the break. But that's a lot of money to be sitting in the AHL. And it's not like all of a sudden Philip Grubauer was having these challenges. Unfortunately, some of these things we've seen signs. And I think that's the frustrating part for me. We've seen signs. You know, we've talked about and been critical about Chandler Stevenson, who I think has really started a mild, albeit mild, but definitely an uptick here. Andre Burakovsky, I've talked about a lot. I think he's starting to find a groove. And you can say, sure, things take time, but also you have to position yourself in a way and in a manner where you can win. And I certainly have questions as to whether that is something that the Seattle Kraken has done with the opportunities that laid ahead of them. I have questions. And, you know, we've been doing stock up, stock down with our insiders. And I've asked the insiders, hey, you know, what would be kind of our big moves? What are our kind of very impactful free agent moves, signings? And I don't really know that I can answer that. The concept came from another podcast in the Locked On Podcast Network. And it's just like, these are the most infamous trades in, you know, this team's history. Now, granted, the Seattle Kraken don't have a lot of history, so having infamous trades is a little bit, it might be hard. But my point, I guess, is I don't know if you want to go full Vegas and do some of the restructuring of the roster so early that they did in their franchise, but I will also say they have a Stanley Cup. We're still looking to get past the second round of the playoffs. So, you know, something's got to give when it comes to how the Seattle Kraken are building out this team and what they're committed to doing now in the intermediate and in the long term of this Seattle Kraken franchise. But again, not great odds for the Seattle Kraken. Doubtful, if I'm being honest, I'm doubtful that they'll be able to make a run to be able to enter the playoffs, let alone make a run in the playoffs. So many questions looming regarding goaltending. What is the status of some of our defensemen? We don't have Jordan Eberle or Yanni Gourde right now. And this is a team, even given some of the free agent moves that we made in the offseason, we knew we were going to have to offload someone. We haven't been able to do that because of the injuries, but that's still a looming thing. That still has to get figured out. So what is it going to take? What is it going to give? And are the Seattle Kraken even going to be remotely active as we march closer to the trade deadline? These are all questions that we're going to have to explore as the season continues. But coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken, let's talk a little bit about the Four Nations face-off. We know that some players have been replaced due to injury, things of that nature. Our vested interest, of course, is in Team Finland because of Kaapo Kakko. You heard on the last episode of Locked On Kraken that I did over the weekend that he was kind of like, I guess they just needed extra bodies. He didn't feel that his play early on in the season warranted perhaps the honor to represent Finland in this Four Nations tournament. But I think he has been great. And we broke down some of those stats on that Kaapo Kakko episode. If you want to listen to it, you can check it out. But we broke down some of his stats, and he is performing better with the Seattle Kraken. Now, several weeks ago, when Kaapo Kakko just signed, asked the question in the headline, right? Can Kaapo Kakko save the Seattle Kraken season? That's to be determined. And honestly, I don't think the answer, I'm inclined to say no, because it doesn't have to be a Kaapo Kakko thing. It has to be a team thing. And I just don't know that I'm willing to go on the record saying that this team has enough moxie, that they have enough sandpaper, that they have enough will to win to really be a winning hockey team. And that's a little bit disappointing, especially because the Seattle Kraken have already been in the postseason in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But coming up next, let's talk about Four Nations Faceoff and how you can watch along at home. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Indeed. You just realized that your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed has all that you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored job posts puts your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. Now, I, love utilizing Indeed for a lot of different things. And as a company owner myself, I haven't used the Indeed process yet, but once I have a clear vision, I'm going to have to do that for sure. Now, you can spend up to your hiring process with $75 with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to indeed.com/locked on. Go to indeed.com/locked on right now. Go to indeed.com/locked on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed's potential sponsors. Terms and conditions apply. If you're hiring, then you need Indeed. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here. And listen, this was a great win. We know it goes straight into what is the Four Nations face-off. The United States, Canada, Finland, and Sweden all going head-to-head. Everything will start on this Wednesday, February 12th, as Sweden takes on Canada. You can watch on TNT, True TV, and Max. 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's 5 p.m. Pacific Time. On Thursday, we get our first look at Capo Caco and Team Finland as they take on the United States, also at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So that is 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Those games will be on ESPN and ESPN Plus and ESPN. And then the next set of games will see Sweden versus Finland at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday, February 15th, and at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the United States versus Canada, also on ABC and ESPN Plus. And as we get through the first handful of games, of course, we'll give you recaps and we'll remind you where you can watch these games. I think it's going to be exciting. We also have had some exciting news in women's hockey on the international front. Team Canada won the rivalry series. Sorry to spoil it for you before we get to our Friday episode of the Women's Hockey Report. But also 3 federations qualified for the Milano Cortina Olympics in 2026, less than a year away from the next Winter Games. So stay tuned on Locked On Kraken. But also we have the Gold Medal Dispatch newsletter. Well, I'll be giving you updates on Olympians, winter, summer, Paralympians, and otherwise as we get ready as a credentialed media member of USOPC, which basically just stands for U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. So very grateful to be accredited again. We hope to have some really fun content for you, but you're going to have to stay tuned. So we'll do a little bit more about Four Nations as the week goes on. We have tomorrow's episode as well. And, I think it's a good time this year with so much going on with the Seattle Kraken. It's been a little tough to consistently keep up with the Firebirds as well as the Kansas City Mavericks. We'll have a little bit of time where we can really get into what's been going on there, what we need to see from some of the young prospects, especially because, again, it's a slim chance that the Seattle Kraken make the playoffs, but I think it's a much greater chance that the front office needs to be able to manage certain things better, including, of course, their staffers. So we'll see what the Seattle Kraken opt to do, if they'll have some opportunities to take a look at some folks and maybe see if they're going to be a good fit in Seattle. That's all we have time for on today's episode. But thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. I get to wear my UMA hat because the Seattle Kraken in the win column going into the Four Nations face-off, and we love to see it. Year of Beniers, you heard from him earlier. Shane Wright, yeah, he's not too shabby either. But be kind to yourself. As I like to remind you, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and hold fast. Stay true and loud and proud. We say, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.